Okay, thank you. Good morning to you, everybody. My name is, as well as Sven Olof Lundin, and I am, at the moment, I should say, working at the Swedish Schools Inspectorate. I've been working with EQAVET since 4 years now. There was a recommendation from the Council back in 2009 for the member countries to establish a national reference point for quality assurance of vet in each country. And in Sweden we established this reference point in 2010, I guess it was, in December. And since then I've been working with this, actually being the national reference point. By then I worked at the the Swedish Schools Inspectorate, but a year ago I was sort of tempted by the National Agency for Education to come and work with them in Stockholm instead of working at the Inspectorate in Gothenburg. And it was very tempting, so I tried it for half a year. And during that half a year, it was last spring, from January to June, I could work as the national reference point even in that department. But since I'm living on the west coast, Stockholm is 500 kilometers away. I didn't like to commute for every week, so I decided to go back to the inspectorate. But the assignment for the department of the agency to be the national reference point stayed with the national agency. So now, today, I'm not working actually with the national reference point. However, there hasn't been anyone that has taken on my tasks in the agency yet. So I guess I'm still the one in this country that knows most of EQAVET, at least apart from or outside the ministry, I should say, because at the ministry there are a couple of people who work with me in those matters. Anyhow, EQAVET is really one of 4 or perhaps 6 different tools that together will enhance the quality or the outcome of vet in Europe. The other ones, EQAVET, EQF, Europass, lifelong learning and validation, I will just mention here for you, but we will concentrate on the EQAVET. By the way, we have EU has been working with different, how should I say, strategies in order to make EU to be a competitive player in the world. And one of the most important parts of this is to become the best vet providers. With a good vet, vocational education and training, we might be able to conquer with the other parts of the world that are rising now. For instance, Africa, south of America, and the southeast of Asia. And at the Lisbon process in March in 2000, the Council set the target of making the European Union the most competitive and most dynamic knowledge-based economic area of the world. That's really high expectations. And We should be capable of sustainable economic growth with more and better jobs and greater social cohesion by 2010, they said then. But as you know, a lot of things happens that you can't really know about. For instance, in 2008 we had a severe economic crisis throughout the world. So you have to deal with those targets on and on again. And through those different processes, we have in the Bruges communique now a lot of targets to be reached either at 2020 or at 2015. There are short-term goals and long-term goals today.
Jag kan det är klart. Bara titta på mig som någon
här. In the target for Europe 2020, there are 5 targets that are really important. For instance, for employment, we say that 75% of the 20 to 64-year-olds to be employed. That's the target. In research and development, 3% of the EU's GDP to be invested in research and development. Climate change and energy sustainability, greenhouse gas emissions 20%, or even 30% if the conditions were right, lower than 1990. 20% of energy from renewables, and 20% increase in energy efficiency. And about education, reducing the rates of early school leaving below 10%. At least 40% of 30 to 34-year-olds completing third level education. And third level education is after secondary school or upper secondary school. And about fighting poverty and social exclusion, at least 20 million fewer people in or at risk of poverty and social exclusion. Those are the 5 main targets for the EU in 2020. Yeah. And for the education part, which we are here for, lifelong learning and mobility is to become reality. It's easy to say, it's harder to do. But different initiatives we are taking are trying to make lifelong learning to become reality. Another strategic target is to increase quality and efficiency in education. And there we have EQAVET, for instance. Furthermore, promoting equal opportunities for all, social cohesion and active citizenship is also something that is very important. So we won't have a divided world. Education should be for all. And also enhancing creativity and innovation, including entrepreneurship at all levels of education. Entrepreneurship is really important for the EU and their fellow countries in order to be able to take the competition with other parts of the world. And as you can see, education in general and VET in particular contributes to a sustainable economic growth. As in the first priority, smart growth, and in the third priority, inclusive growth. And perhaps the two of them might be needed to be able to make it able to fulfill the second priority, sustainable growth. Because I think that sustainable growth might need new skills and entrepreneurship, for instance. So as you can see, the priorities for the Europe 2020 is really dealing with education questions altogether. Yes, please. So now, how are those different tools connected to each other? As I said, EQAVET is one of, I say 4 tools today. You can stay there. If you just give me 2 or 3. EQAVET, for you as a student, or as a young person, or as an adult person, EQAVET ensure that you will have a quality assured and highly developed vet education. That's the main purpose with EQAVET. And please, for you. EQAVET, EQAVET. I heard we had one expert on EQAVET from Germany here. You are the one, okay? So you can correct me if I'm wrong. EQAVET really in the Swedish understanding of the tool makes it possible for the student to take a part of a course in another country or at another school or in a school at another level in the system. The different from, or the opposite to a system with EQAVET might be that you have a 3-year-long course with only 1 syllable. But EQAVET demands you to identify small parts in the long course that might be able to change to another part. Sadly though, I should say that working with EQAVET hasn't been that easy because there are so many different understandings of what we are doing here. For instance, how long should a part of the course be? We are measuring them in points. And there is 60 points for a year, and for full-time education in a year there might be 60 points, just as in the higher education. But can a EQAVET part be a unit? I think we call it. Might a unit be 2-3 points? Or might it be 20 points? Or how long should a unit be? And there we are not really talking the same language within all the different countries. I know that in Netherlands, for instance, they are talking of very small units. In Sweden we are talking of greater units, I should say, perhaps 15 or 20 points or something like that. So anyway, EQAVET, no matter if you're talking of small or bigger units, anyway, it really demands you to think of education as different parts to make a program, not one course to make a program. And if you're thinking of different parts, then you can perhaps go abroad and take a part in another country. For instance, if you're working in a vet school in Spain and you are working with cars, perhaps you could take a course in the northern of Sweden and how to deal with tires in winter, in snow, for instance. That might be. Or if you are working, if you are in vet education in the south of Sweden, learning how to cook meals and things. Then you might take a course of how you are making bread in Denmark, for instance. And might that way be more employable on both sides of that water, the difference between Sweden and Denmark. Okay. EQF. Are you familiar with this? Perhaps.
National qualifications.
Yes. This part of the toolbox has really come quite long, I should say. The European countries are supposed, or I should say the EU countries are supposed to divide all their education into 8 different steps, where the highest education you ever can get might be on the 8th level, or 8th level. And the easiest education is on the 1st level. Many countries have done this. Sweden has also done it. But in Sweden it's just a proposal and has been so for 2 years now. The government needs to take a decision on this in order to change the law, because when you have done this, then you will have in all your certificates, your graduates, a number that tells you what this certificate is in what level. So if you go abroad with a certificate from the education, an employer abroad or a school abroad can see that you have been taken on a course on level 4. You have been studying on level 4, for instance. EQAVET, initial vet, in Sweden are proposed to be on level 4, and that's, well, the most common, I should say, from all the other countries. So EQAVET would be on the level 4, CVET on level 5, and in some cases maybe on level 6. But after that, it's more academic educations. Yes, please. Europass. This tool has in Sweden really gone really far, because today there are more than 100,000 Europasses created on the net by students. And Europass is a digital CV that are common for all the countries in the EU. And working with this, and if you have a Europass, it will be very easy for you and for the country or the school or where you are trying to get into, to see what you've been doing in your work life and in education. So this is the way the 4 different tools work together for you as a student. So now about the EQAVET. And here I was supposed to have a link here to a quality cycle poster, but it didn't work, so we have to deal with it another way.
Internet, so maybe I can start.
No, we can do like this.
Okay.
There it is. I prepared myself. The EQAVET is now an agreement amongst the today 28 member countries, and I think there are 5 or 6 fellow countries. As Norway, Turkey, we have Liechtenstein, we have Iceland, Montenegro, and somewhere there. And those countries has agreed on first that for having a quality system needs to follow some kind of plan, some kind of wheel, a cycle, it's needed for you to have some kind of review of what is the situation today. Where are we in one way or another? And if you feel that you would like to be better in this part, in that part, then you have to plan some kind of action for this. Something that you need to do. And you have to implement it, and after when you have worked with it, you need to have an evaluation and think of, did we get where we wanted to be? If not, what went wrong? Why didn't we get there? Or if you are there you want to be, are there anything else we need to improve, for instance? And this cycle needs to go on and go on and go on. You have to win new victories all the time. Connected to this quality cycle, the countries in the EU are agreed on 10 quality indicators. And now I think we can go back to the presentation. And through a long process, from more than 200 different quality indicators, the EU members has agreed on 10 indicators that all will have to work with, or I should say are recommended to work with. The states in the EU are independent states, but they are recommended, and as a recommendation everybody is working with it, more or less I should say. But as you can see, from 200 or more than 200 different indicators boil down to just 10. They are quite, how should I say, not very sharp, they are quite broad, those indicators. Anyway, let's talk about them. Can we take this? The first one is really about the quality cycle, I should say. It says relevance of quality assurance system for vet providers. This indicator are meant to be dealing with if you as a state know and has control of that vet providers are working in a systematic way with quality issues. And you can do this in different ways. You can demand your providers to use a quality system, and there are different quality systems that are sold and are developed by independent actors. Or you can do as we have done in Sweden. We think that we have done this in the way that we are demanding the schools by law to have any quality system. They need to have a quality system, but they can use anyone they want. And this is controlled by the Swedish Schools Inspectorate, where I'm working. So that's why we are saying that on a systematic level, yes, we fulfill this indicator. And most of the countries really do today also. Yes, please. First I should say that those 10 indicators really works on a systematic level, on the national level, in order to see that, for the state to see that, yes, our vet system is working as we would like it to do. All the indicators are not usable for vet providers, I should say. Some of them are, but not all of them. Some of them are working on a regional level or at a municipality level, local level, I should say. This second indicator might be one indicator that works both on a national level as well as on a provider level, because this is dealing with if the trainers and teachers has got some kind of education for themselves, if they are trained. And this might be a problem in different countries. It is a small problem in Sweden as well. It's not easy to make young people interested to become a vet teacher, because the wages are too low for that. They are earning much more out in the industry. For one thing, I should say. And about the trainers on the workplaces, the enterprises, it's not easy to give them courses, because we think, or the school think, that they haven't got the time, they're not interested. It's too expensive, I say. So in Sweden today, the agency where I worked this spring have got the assignment from the ministry to create a course for all trainers in Sweden that will be based on the internet, so that they can take it on by themselves at any time, whenever they can. And if they do, their company will get a fund for some 1,100 euros, something like that. So that's how the Swedish state are dealing with this, getting the trainers to be educated. Yes, please. Participation rate programs might not be usable for a single school, since you might be a school that only provides students with their programs, and 100% of the students are in their program. But for the state, we have a huge problem in Sweden with this today. Today there is just a little bit more than 30% of the students that goes into upper secondary school that take on a vet program. Almost 70% of the students in Sweden will take on a course for higher education studies. And that's a big problem for Sweden today. So we are trying to, on ministry level, develop vet programs that might be more interesting to the young kids, but we are not reaching that yet, I should say. We have been changing the programs so they might be a little bit easier, but then the students even more wanted to go to higher education programs. So I don't know if the government know really what the next step might be in order to change this. Yes, please. This indicator, though, completion rate in vet programs is a very usable indicator for the single school, as well for the national statistic, of course. If you follow up how many of your students that will fulfill their course or the program, then you have a really good base for discuss why are we reaching those results? Why couldn't 100% fulfill the program? What are we doing wrong? We could ask questions to those dropouts. Why didn't you fulfill? Was it anything we could do in order to easing it for you to fulfill? So this indicator is really usable for vet providers. Yes, please. And this one is a really interesting one. After a program, after a VET program, are they employable? Are they employed, the ones that fulfill the education? Where did they go? Have we got a VET program that really makes them employable? That is important both on the national and the regional, and of course at the school level itself. It might be that a VET provider, a school, has got the wrong equipment for that program, for instance. Old equipment that makes the student not prepared for the industry in the local area, for instance. And then they might not be employed. And these things, you need to know about it. And following up how many of the students that are employed a certain time after the education, then you can see if you are doing the right things in the different programs. Yes, please. And this one is also a little bit in the same field. Those who actually are employed after their fulfillment of a program, have they got the right skills? Have we been learning them the right things, up-to-date things, or are we learning them old things? It's really interesting, but might be very hard to get to know about. It's not that easy. You can't find any statistics. You really, if you're working with this indicator, you really need to talk to the employers and ask them, what do you think? Have this boy or this girl really the skills that you need? Or shall we do anything else? Yes, please. This indicator, unemployment rates. All the states in the EU are working with this. It's not usable on the school level, of course, but might be in local level or the regional level. But for the school, it might not be useful. In Sweden, we have a national agency that are dealing with those kind of figures very much. And they are presenting it each month, the unemployment rate in different criteria. So, and I guess that all the other EU member countries are doing it quite well. This indicator, prevalence of vulnerable groups, is interesting. How are we doing in a country, in a region, in a municipality, or in a school in order to make the VET programs possible also for those who are not the first one to step into the course? We are here talking about vulnerable groups. What are they? Well, they might be groups that are in one way or another disadvantaged. It might be, for instance, that we talk about women in men-dominated work, or the opposite, men in female-dominated work areas. It might be, for instance, in Sweden, where we have a very wide country, people living up in the north, far away from VET schools. How do we do in order to make it possible for them to go to VET school? You might say that those in that perspective are a vulnerable group. And you can talk about different aspects of this. One vulnerable group might be those who has been unemployed for a very long time. That might be a vulnerable group as well. Yes, please. This indicator is, of course, for the national level. It's in the national interest to be able to create programs that will fit into the needs in the national labor market. And in order to do that, you really need to have mechanisms to see what is needed and what is not needed. What is new, what is coming, what is old, what can we leave behind? And the last one. All in all, making VET accessible, making it possible for everyone and each other to take on a VET course. How do we do that? Those are the 10 indicators that the countries in the EU and the fellow countries are agreed upon. But now, in the Bruges communique from 2010, one of the goals, for short-time goals that will be fulfilled at the end of 2015, is that every country should establish a national reference framework. This is the framework for the EU. Now, the different countries will create and establish a national framework. And there, where we are now in Sweden, we haven't got a national framework on paper like this. And I'm not sure that we will have it either, because it is a little bit not in line with the school laws in Sweden. The school laws gives the VET provider very big space to create their own systems. And if we establish a national system for quality assurance of VET, then we are really interfering with the school laws. So I'm not sure that we will do that. Anyway, I'm not the one that has got the assignment for doing that. Anyway. So, this is now what I have had to say about EQAVET as a system. We're working with it all over Europe in different ways. I should say that today a quality assurance system is more common than uncommon in schools and in the member countries. In one way or another, I should say. But then we have those questions. What does it mean to this network? Is it usable in any way for you as members in the rural network? I'm not sure. And this is for you to discuss in an hour now, from now on. Are there any questions? Everything totally clear, or are you very mixed up?
What will happen if Sweden doesn't follow this and do a national program for that?
Well, in Sweden, as I said, the school law today demands all the VET providers to have a quality system in place. And the Swedish Schools Inspectorate has the assignment from the government to control this, and the inspectorate are controlling it on every EQAVET school from now on, every third year. So this is controlled and checked. And if the school are failing in this aspect, then they are obliged to tell the inspectorate what they are going to do in order to be past the check from the inspectorate. On CVET, continuing vet, we have another system, I should say. There is another department working with control of CVET providers. But the demands on them are not different really. They need to have their own quality assurance system, even in CVET. But I'm not sure how the control of this are really being done. I guess, a little bit more than guess, but I'm not quite sure, that they are controlling, that other departments are controlling just by documents. They're not visiting the provider. They're looking through their documents. We are not hearing very much of that in Sweden. We hear a lot of what the Swedish schools inspectorate are doing. Every day there are some news what we have been done, but we are not hearing anything about the other one. And as I said, since we have this system, by the law and by the inspectorate, then I guess that the government thinks that we are there. We have been doing what we need to do. So I'm not sure if there will be any more steps taken in this matter.
Thank you, Sven Olof.
We have a question.
In the informal training, because we speak about the vocational training, but in a formal and structured manner. But you also have the informal training on the job training. So if you are a level 3, for example, but through the training you reach a level 4, how is that then related to a certificate?
Yeah, that's interesting, this informal learning. At the last annual meeting for EQAVET in March this year, the questions about informal learning was there. And many speeches said that we need to have a quality system for the informal learning. But the informal learning, as I understand it, is something that is being done without anyone doing anything. I mean, you are learning while doing other things, really. It's not like non-formal learning, because non-formal learning is a purpose learning. It's a purpose learning outside the formal system, but you're still there in order to take on some kind of course, some kind of learning to be done, and can be measured, sort of. That kind of learning really is in the system of EQAVET. You need to have a quality assurance system also for the non-formal learning. But for the informal learning, you can't really have a quality system that assures the informal learning before you are evaluating it into formal learning. Because those levels, they are in the formal system. The informal learning aren't worth anything because before you are turning it into a formal learning.
Because it's all academic based.
No, it's not all academic based.
No, academic, I mean it is structure based academically.
Yeah, you might say so, yes.
So if there had to be assessors, for example,
well,
because you find a lot of workers who have on-the-job training
Yes.
and have not had any form of formal training, but if they have to be assessed on their competencies and skills, that could relate to an EQF level
Yes, in the formal system.
in the formal system,
Yes.
recognized in the formal system.
Yes.
But
And
there
that-
is, I always find there is this gap between the informal and informal.
I don't understand it like a gap. It's all clear that every one of us has a lot of informal learning. Every one of us have it. But it's only interesting for the formal system the moment when you are evaluating it in order to get a certificate or a paper in one way or another.
You are looking for a job and your informal
Yeah,
skill, and you don't have a certificate for it, then
then you
Yeah.
haven't got it.
you haven't got it, but you have it.
Yeah, you might have it, but then we have different, in different branches we are dealing with different systems. For instance, in construction sector in Sweden, you can't get a job, or at least you can't get fully paid if you're not educated within a system that they have applied to, or no, not applied to, that they have was godkänt, was I
Intended?
approved. If you haven't got, if you have a lot of informal learning or informal knowledge within the field, you really have to evaluate it by the branch or by a school or by anyone. But you can't get
We were
employment
speaking
as
about
a
this
carpenter.
yesterday, remember?
Maybe
Because-
we can
because-
do that during the coffee break. Profilpass. Yesterday, Germany told us about Profilpass, and it's informal learning. We have competences in our informal learning, and you can then make
But
them
it's what you
visible.
said, like you have to evaluate them. And the
Yes.
Profilpass is a tool to evaluate your own competences, but then there still is a gap that this has to be like, also you, when you know your own competences, and you wrote them down and you evaluate them, you have, they have to be recognized by some authority to be,
Exactly.
to get into the formal learning. And that's still a gap also, yeah.
But there are other branches that are not that eager to protect themselves. In Sweden we have a program in EQAVET that educates hotel staff, those who are working by the counter or cleaning up rooms, things like that. And youngsters go into this program, stays there for 3 years and graduate eventually, but they won't be hired. Because the hotels, they are more interested in those who are 25-year-old and has matured, and they are not that keen on what program they have been into. It's more important that they have been out in the world, traveling around, learned languages, met people, skills like that. And that is informal learning. And they don't have to evaluate it to be employed by the hotels. It's more important that you are 25 years old or so and can take people.
Yeah,
and
but
talk to them.
I still believe that in some cases it is keeping the youth, especially, out of the jobs.
Yeah, it might be. Okay?
We can continue the discussions with coffee break, and I think we can have these questions after, and we will discuss it here in a minute.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sven Olof.
Thank you.